Okay, here we go. For your planning purposes tonight, figure about an hour and a half, all right? No more than that. And let's get going. And the topic tonight is a twofold topic. It's writing compelling property descriptions, as well as how to strategically demonstrate a property. And by the way, the course materials are in the back, and the sign-in sheets in the back as well. So make sure that you grab both. Okay? Here we go. Let's talk about writing a great property description. You know, think of it this way. You worked hard to get the listing, and you finally nailed the listing. And so many agents today, and you don't have to go very far to see this firsthand, so many agents today write lousy property descriptions. Write lousy property descriptions. On our website, there's some very poorly written property descriptions. And I just want to reinforce one thing, that buyers today are very savvy, buyers today are very astute, and one of the things that they do is they pore over and evaluate and read property descriptions. You know, this isn't the old days where you had to pay by word, okay, in the newspapers. Now it's all free. It's all free. So there's no reason why you shouldn't write a compelling, well-thought-out property description when you have a listing. And we're going to be talking about some of those elements that are so critically important, okay? You want to get out of the gates quickly. And you know, the thing that I want to emphasize is that when a buyer goes ahead to read a property description, they're comparing that property to other like-in-kind properties. So if you have a listing, you want to do your darndest to make sure that your property description makes your property stand out. And the whole notion behind a property description is to get the ball with the ring. That's the whole idea, okay? Now, so you want to get out of the gates quickly. And one of the key things with writing a compelling property description is the notion of writing it in a way where the buyer can visualize him or herself walking through the property. That's the way a real good property description is written. Okay? Now, second point. And here's a tip that'll save you some time. Many agents go out on a listing appointment and they get the listing, and then they have to go back to look at the property again to outline those key outstanding elements that make the property special, unique, and different. When you're on a listing appointment and you go on the house tour, and we've talked about this before, the house tour is very, very, very important. You've got to take your time on the house tour. Even if it's a one-bedroom condo, you've got to take your time. You have to go down and see where the parking is, you want to see the lobby area, you want to see the common areas. Take your time. I know agents that have gone on a listing appointment and they've listed other properties in the building, and they tell the seller, you know, I know your particular, you know, property inside and out, because that's the wrong thing to do. If the seller doesn't think that you like their property, then they're not going to give you the listing. Okay? So what I'm suggesting is that when you go on the house tour, on the listing appointment, make certain that you take your time and take detailed notes. Now, we talked about this, you know, a couple times ago, and I go over these points because I want them to become muscle memory for everybody. When you're on the listing appointment and you're walking the property, you want to have a clipboard, you want to have a pad, and you want to be making copious notes about those elements that are particularly outstanding in the property. It shows that you're officious, it shows the seller that you're professional, and it shows the seller that you are very interested in their property. Now, the other benefit is this, that as you go through the property, you should be noting those elements that make that property special, unique, and different. Those features that are particularly outstanding. Because from that listing of items that are special, unique, and different, from those features that you write down, you're going to be writing your property description from them. So if the property, if you're going into the dining room and there's crown molding and picture frame molding and oversized baseboard molding, and there's a butler's pantry, you're going to want to make notes of those things, because when you write the property description, you're going to want to incorporate them. So the point is, just real simple, when you go on the house tour, make great notes so you don't have to go back to be able to develop and craft your property description, okay? Point number 3. We call those outstanding elements unique selling propositions. A unique selling proposition is an element, a feature in the property that makes it special, unique, and different, that makes it stand out to other like-in-kind properties that buyers may be viewing concurrently or the next click-through that they do on the internet. Okay? Unique selling propositions. Now, these unique selling propositions are not only elements inside the property, but elements outside the property. A well-kept neighborhood, proximity to transportation, a blue ribbon elementary school, the fact that there's a police precinct right around the corner, food shopping nearby. Those are all elements that want to be incorporated into a well-written property description. A great question to ask the seller when you're in the property, besides from you just making notes about these outstanding elements, always ask the seller why they bought. Because invariably something will come up that maybe you didn't think of, maybe it's an intangible type of thing, that you can also incorporate into your property description. Because the reason why they bought, no doubt, is going to be the reason why other people have bought or will buy their property as well. Okay? About the middle of the page, where the paragraph that begins with before writing the final property description. Before writing the final property description, now you've taken the listing, you've got your elements, you start to craft the property description, always pull the comps. Pull the comps. Go back and pull the comps. The comps that you presented. Why? It's very, very simple. Because you're going to want to make sure that your property description makes the comps pale by comparison. Why? Because every buyer that looks at your property that you've listed and your description is going to be looking at the comps. So why not try to make your property shine compared to other properties that that buyer is looking at? It's a smart thing to do. It's one extra step. Most agents don't do it. I encourage everybody in this room to do it. Pull comps and compare and contrast the property description that you've just written before you post it to those other comps that your property is going to be competing against. Okay? When you're writing your property description, start from the outside of the property. Start from the outside of the property and write a description that effectively walks the buyer through the property, as I mentioned a couple moments ago. After writing it, sit back and read it with a third pair of eyes, as a buyer would, or as a realtor would. Would you visit it? Is it compelling enough? Does it tell a story? Does it tell a lifestyle? You know, people don't buy properties for short-term investment anymore. And those days are gone for a while. They'll come back, but they're gone for a while. Why do people buy?
Security.
Security, for sure. What else?
Emotion.
Emotion. People buy on emotion and they justify with fact. Excellent, Anthony. People buy on emotion and they justify with fact. 95% of the reasons why a buyer buys something is emotion. And that emotion has to do with improving their lifestyle. Improving their lifestyle. Everyone that I know moves for one reason or another in an effort to improve their lifestyle. So when you write a property description, it should evoke emotion, and it should also talk about the lifestyle that can be afforded within that property. Okay? Make sure that once it gets posted on the Brooklyn MLS, make sure that you check it out, and perfect the showing and availability instructions. Please, whenever you list a property, make it a point to ensure that you are the contact person for any other realtor who wants to be able to show your property to their buyer. Why? Because you want to be able to get not only that realtor's feedback, make sure that you let that realtor know that you want their feedback after they show your property, but you also want to get their buyer's feedback. And with that information, you're going to go ahead and go to the seller's dashboard and be able to put that information in there so that you have a great reason, and at least an anchor reason, to potentially get a price reduction if the listing you took was overpriced. Okay? Now make certain that your property description has a lead-in line and a wrap-up. A lead-in line and a wrap-up.
The lead-in line is just like any kind of advertisement that you may see for any product, good, or service that catches someone's attention. Okay? What would be a great lead-in line? Just reduced. Absolutely. That's a great lead-in line. Just price reduced. What's another great lead-in line? Won't last. I mean, that could be that's really a wrap-up. Won't last. But that's a good example of a wrap-up. How about just listed, new to market, fresh on market, something that will grab the buyer's attention. It's called a lead-in line. Okay? Don't miss out on this lifestyle. It's a good wrap-up line. So make sure that there's a good lead-in line and a good wrap-up. Won't last long. I mean, that's kind of common.
Price to sell, is that lead-in?
Price, no, that's fine. Price to sell, that's a good lead-in line.
Price to sell lead-in,
Yeah.
and wrap-up?
Yeah, no, price to sell is a great lead-in line. Make sure you have a lead-in line and make sure you have a wrap-up. If anyone, I've got a document, email me if you want a copy of it. I've got a document that has 100 lead-in lines, 100 wrap-up lines, and you can pick and choose to use them as you please. Okay? Lead-in line, wrap-up. Yes.
Okay, last year when you gave the St. Clair, you gave out a couple of pages on what kind of descriptions to use. I don't know if you remember that. You have the different phrases.
Yeah, that's the document. That's the document I'm talking about.
Still have?
I still have it. Yeah. So give me a heads up. It's a thick document. It's maybe 20 pages long, but it's compelling. Okay. It's good to write a description. Okay. So just email me and I'll make sure I get it in your hands. It'll be too cumbersome to hand out tonight. Okay. Yes. Say it again. Yeah, it's lesnewlands@fillmore.com. lesnewlands@fillmore.com. All right? All right. So lead-in line and a wrap-up. Lead-in line and a wrap-up. Don't just start saying to BR, to BTA. Don't do that. Don't do that. No abbreviations. You don't need to do abbreviations anymore. The last bullet here is photos, photos, photos. Now I mentioned this a couple classes ago. I was at a seminar with a number of top webmasters. They're called, one for Google, one for Yahoo, one from Trulia, and these are the guys and gals who look at the statistics and evaluate the statistics. And almost every website today, the buyer can not only choose to search by bedroom and bathroom count, price, what have you, but they can also search by photos. I just want to reinforce this again and again and again. Get as many photos onto your property posting as possible. I believe that the photographer here takes about 8 photos. I urge you to take additional photos. Now, if it's a one-bedroom condo, there's not a lot of photos to be taken. Take some shots outside about Restaurant Row, about the new elementary school, about the park across the street. More photos, more views. That's what these webmasters were saying. And the misconception is that a longer property description doesn't get read. Totally wrong. Totally wrong. I mean, it's an old school type of thinking that if it's too lengthy, the property description doesn't get read. That's inaccurate. Per these people who live this business on a day in, day out, and check click-throughs and click the amount of page impressions that listings get on their respective websites. Okay? Photos, 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 well-written property descriptions that walks someone through the property. Let me just give you an example. Let's say that it's just listed, just hit the market, just new on the market. That would be a good lead-in line, and something that would build emotion. You might write, if this was the case, of course, as you walk down the street to this property, you'll see how proud the neighbors are who keep their properties so well kept that are on the same street. Something that evokes emotion. Because, you know, when you think about it, everyone wants to live in a neighborhood where the properties are well kept. So you're playing to the viewers. So write it almost like a story. Walk them down the street, walk them to the outside of the property, view the mature landscaping that is meticulously kept. Boom, that's the outside, then move right along. It's a great thing to do to tell a story, Okay, let's move on.
How do
Yes.
you write a description for a property where this doesn't appeal to you personally? How do you?
Yeah, that's a great question. How do you write something sexy about something that isn't sexy, or that isn't appealing? Well, you have to step aside because, I think we all learned a long time ago that there's a shoe for every foot. There's a shoe for every foot. Now, if this property doesn't have a lot of exciting elements in it, but it's very well priced, you want to focus on the fact that it's very well priced. That's why you must take time to really take a good close look at what makes that property unique, special, and different. Whether it's location, whether it's price, whether it's the oversized bedrooms, whether it's an updated kitchen, whether it's a new boiler, whether it's a new roof, you want to focus on the positives. We have to separate ourselves from what we like and what we don't like, because at every price point there are different buyers, and everything is relative when you come right down to it. You just have to focus on those outstanding elements, those unique selling propositions, inside, outside. It could be the size of the rooms, it could be the price per square foot, any one of those elements.
And you also stress the fact that it's a blank canvas
Sure.
for you to.
Right,
Creative.
Absolutely. Creative minds. Bring that emotion in there.
Try to appeal to the property, to the type of buyer that the property might be for. Like if it's a beat-up piece of junk, there's no way around it. Handyman special,
Sure.
like do-it-yourself, fixer-upper.
Absolutely
appeal to that
possible.
person who's looking for something low price and they want to go higher.
Great point. The property has a lot of potential. Whenever you see that, this property has a lot of potential, that means it's a mess. So there's a way of spinning different things. Okay? All right. Building value while showing a property. This is really a pet peeve of mine, and it's something that bugs me to no end. And we kid about this sometimes. There's a wide variety of real estate television programs now that you can see, right? There's on the cable channels. And these realtors, high-end realtors, selling very expensive properties, it bugs the heck out of me when you see them walk a buyer into the property and they just let the buyer wander about. That's the wrong thing to do. A couple times I actually picked the phone to try to get a hold of the producer and say, what's going on here? Please, remember this. And if you walk away with one thing tonight, there is a major, major difference between showing a property and selling a property. It's like night and day. Most agents show properties. This is the kitchen, isn't it nice? And over here is a nice little eating nook. If you do that, get a gun, put it to your head, all right? That's showing. You can get a 9-year-old kid to show. Our job as professional salespeople, and whether you like to think of yourself as that or not, you better start. Because you're not just a realtor, you're a salesperson. We gotta sell. We gotta sell. And there's a very, very simple formula for selling. Very simple formula. And we're gonna go over that. And I take it to the nth degree, unfortunately. But if you just make an effort to really focus on selling, it'll be like night and day. And there's an additional benefit to this. There's an additional benefit to this. If you get into the habit of really selling, and you're hosting an open house, and let's say you're a new agent or you're looking to pick up some additional potential buyers to work with, and you get into the habit of really selling, while you're at the open house, demonstrating the property to a buyer, I can't tell you how many times many buyers who come to open houses are nosy neighbors who are thinking about selling. And if they see an agent who's very professional, and who's selling and presenting, listings are gotten in that type of scenario. So get into the habit, and it's just something you have to get mentally comfortable with, okay? Now, our responsibility when showing a property is to validate the price. It's the whole point. When we take a buyer to a property, our job is to validate the price. And clearly, the poorer the effort that you and I make in really strategically demonstrating a property, will be in direct proportion to lowball offers. Many lowball offers come as a result of the agent showing the property and not having built value. Price-value relationship. That's what we're talking about. Demonstrating a property and building value. Okay? You know, and just much like we talked about a moment ago, if you've worked hard in qualifying a buyer, searched the market, pulled up properties to show the buyer, you get them out there to see the property, you're going to be in the property with it, why don't you focus on going ahead and selling them on it? Now, I'm going to break it down real simple for you, and this is very, very basic. Many of you know this already, so let me just reinforce it. There's really two buckets of things, two categories of things that you and I want to sell when we take a buyer out to a property. There's two categories. Just clear this in your mind. There's two categories of things that we're selling. One category of things are those must-haves, want-to-haves, like-to-haves, and elements that our buyer told us were important to them. Now, before you ever take a buyer out to see a property, you should qualify them over the phone and in person in your office, and merely ask them, tell me, Mrs. Johnson, what are those must-haves in that two-bedroom condo that you and your husband are going ahead to buy? What are the must-haves? Line those out for me. And what are those like-to-haves that aren't musts, but they're like-to-haves? And tell me, what are those things that, if this property that I'm going to take you to had, would be something that would prevent you from buying? Tell me those things. Tell me a little bit about your lifestyle requirements, what's important to you. So you're going to ask these sorts of questions before you ever go out, before you ever conduct a search. So when you get the buyer out to the property, and this property has 3 or 4 of the elements that they told you were must-haves, and maybe 1 or 2 of the like-to-haves, and it didn't have any of the no-nos, you're going to focus on selling them. Now, the easiest way to sell someone is just to find out their needs and their wants and sell them back to them once you get out there. Just to reinforce it. That's the way you sell. Okay? Finding out about your buyer's needs, wants, their hot buttons, their must-haves, their like-to-haves, and once you get them out to the property, to sell them back. Now that's one bucket, and that's the most important bucket. The second bucket of things that you're going to be selling when you get out to that property are things in that property that the buyer didn't ask for, but that are outstanding, that are unique, special, and different. Things that are outstanding. Now, buyers very rarely will say, I want to have oversized 6-inch baseboard molding. Buyers rarely will say, having a window over the kitchen sink is the most important thing to me. But if that property does have a window over the kitchen sink, which is a nice element for a variety of different reasons, you want to point it out. Because that's almost like icing on the cake to additionally build value in the property. So again, you're going to be focusing on those elements that are unique, that the buyer told you that they wanted, that are must-haves, like-to-haves, and then you're also going to focus on those elements in the property that the buyer didn't mention anything about, but that are particularly outstanding, unique, and that add value, almost icing on the cake. Everybody cool with that? Everybody understand that? That's focusing in on selling. Okay? Now, here's where the rubber meets the road when it comes to selling anything. I don't care whether it's diamond rings, airplanes, real estate, or porcelain dolls. It doesn't matter. The way to sell is very simply to point out a feature Point out a feature. Okay, just write this down. Write this down. This is very, very important. This is going to be all over the test. Okay? You want to point out a feature and then convert that feature into a benefit for the buyer. Okay? So you want to point out a feature, show them how that feature is going to benefit them,